Welcome to the Two Guys at a Cooler channel. Eric here, and today you're going to need two sharp knives. If you're going to follow along with me, I'm using a boning knife and a chef's knife, and we're going to remove the culatello from the hind leg of the pig. If you were to go to your butcher and you said to the butcher, I need a hind leg, this is what you're going to get. Sometimes they leave the skin on. If you leave the skin on, you can make prosciutto, but I've had the skin removed because in today's video, we're going to be making and processing culatello. We had a lot of requests to show how to extract the culatello from the hind leg, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. And I'm just going to take you through the entire process all the way to hanging it in our drying chamber. So the first thing I want to show you is the muscles and the bones that we're going to be dealing with. The first bone structure is at the top. It's part of the hip bone, the tailbone, and the H bone. That's what that is right there. And it's going to go down into the leg bone, the stifle joint, and then the hind shank. And that's going to make up basically the bone that runs from the hoof, from the bottom, all the way that connects to the H bone, right in that little area right there. As we look at the leg bone, the meatier portion on the right, or it could be on the left, depending on what side you have, is known as the culatello. And then the smaller portion opposite that is known as the pheo. All right, so I'm going to show you how to remove both of those. But first, let's go ahead and work on the bones. And the first bone structure that we're going to remove is a little tricky. We're dealing with the tailbone, a portion of the hip bone, and then the H bone, and you're going to see here in a minute once we remove it that it has a very funny shape. So if you're going to do this yourself, just make sure you follow the curve of the bone very slowly with a very sharp knife, and you're going to begin to work it away from the skin itself. The H bone is a little tricky because it actually at one point looks like a bit of an arrowhead, and it digs into the very top of the culatello. And you want to make sure that you carefully remove it without destroying too much of the culatello. But that's what that first bone looks like. That's where the leg bone goes into. And then this little section right here at the very bottom, this is the little portion that I was talking about that digs into the culatello. Well, you got to kind of carefully remove that. And once you have that removed, we can move on to the next step. So notice there's been a flap of meat that's been created because we've removed that bone structure. All we're going to do is cut that flap of meat off, cutting it at a slight angle towards us. Notice how I'm cutting it like that. And I'm going to set that to the side. Before we remove the leg bones, let's go ahead and milk the artery. So we're looking for the femoral artery, and the femoral artery runs along the femur. And what you're going to do basically with your thumb or with the palm of your hand, starting from the bottom, push along that artery all the way to the top, and you're going to be able to milk it free of any blood. The reason you want to do that is so that the blood doesn't remain inside your meat while it's dry curing, as the blood could go rancid, leaving your meat with a bitter and somewhat undesirable taste. So you're just going to do that a couple times and make sure you remove the blood. Once you do that, you can go ahead and begin removing the leg bone. This is pretty straightforward. The leg bone is going to run from the bottom to the very top, and we're going to start at the hind shank and cut a little bit at an angle. So the very bottom of the shank isn't really what I'm looking for. So once I cut away a little bit of the bottom, I'm going to come from the very top because I can visibly see the bone, and I'm going to go ahead and expose it. And then as I do that, I'm just going to fillet the meat away from the bone very carefully, ensuring that I don't cut into either the pheo or the culatello. Then once we have that, we can remove the bone. That's what that's going to look like. Set it to the side. It's going to make for great stock, for great soups. And if you put it all back together, you're going to see you have your culatello on the right, you have your pheo on the left, and we're going to cut it right down the center, exactly where that bone was. To separate the culatello, rotate your entire cut around to where you're looking at the very top of it, and then make an even cut all the way down, separating that muscle from everything else. And now you have kind of an unrefined version of your culatello. We're going to clean it up here in just a second, but that's what that's going to look like. To remove the pheo, go ahead and continue with that horizontal cut, and now you've got the pheo, the top portion of the ham, and then the culatello separated. You have three very distinct pieces ready for whatever it is that you have planned. Now that our culatello is removed and I've got it partially trussed up, we're going to go ahead and cut a little bit of that bottom off just to square it up just a tiny little bit. And I'm going to finish trussing it up just to tighten it all together. Now, this is entirely optional during the curing phase. I like to hold its shape, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I'm going to just put a very simple butcher's knot. And if you'd like me to show you how we do a butcher's knot, just leave me a comment in the comment section below. But it's very easy. Create a slip knot. And then once you create a slip knot, you want to make sure that you give it a quick snap with your wrist so that this just locks into place. And as soon as you do that, we're going to come back and then we're just going to tighten it up so that it doesn't go anywhere. And that's it. Now you've got a very simple butcher's knot. This is primarily going to be to hold the shape of the culatello while it's curing. Like I said, it's totally optional because during the curing process, it's not entirely necessary because we can truss it up at the very end. But I like to do that just to kind of keep it all together as the meat tightens and goes through the curing process. We're going to go ahead and square up the front. And once we've done that, this is what your culatello is going to look like. And depending on the size of your pig, really determines the fat cap that it has behind it. So as you can see, mine was a relatively skinny pig. It was a fairly young pig. Yours may be bigger, big fat cap all the way around. That's also nice. And let's get ready to cure. We're going to keep this recipe really simple. Insecure number 2, sea salt, and some black pepper. We're using the equilibrium cure, so we need to weigh our culatello and then jot that number down. That's going to be our base number. Based off of how much our culatello weighs, we're going to multiply each ingredient by that. And for that reason, the recipe is going to have percentages. For instance, salt is going to be 2.5%. You're going to multiply 2.5% by the weight of your culatello, and that's how much salt you add. And then you're going to go through the rest of the recipe if you want to do it this way. Once you have your seasonings well incorporated, you're going to go ahead and rub your meat down fairly well. Remember, because we are using the equilibrium cure, you're going to use 100% of your seasonings. This particular cure ensures that your meat gets exactly the right amount of cure, the right amount of salt, without having any waste. There's really no guesswork involved, unlike the salt box method, which is another fairly popular method for curing meats. In this particular method, we're just going to make sure that we give our culatello a rub down all the way around. Whatever seasonings fall off or whatever seasonings remain in the tray, we're going to scoop all of that up and we're going to add it to our vacuum seal bag. So notice now I have a vacuum seal bag. This is the best way to do it because it's really going to lock in a vacuum and it's going to help those seasonings penetrate the meat, which is what I've done here. Finally, we want to take the diameter of our culatello. So I'm just going to take a tape measure and measure it across the largest section, and I've got roughly about a 7.5 inch diameter. So I'm going to take you to a cure calculator, a brining calculator, and you're going to click the Brining Time tab. The link's going to be in the description box below. Type in the thickness of your culatello, which was 7.5 inches. I'm going to mark inches, and I'm going to put whether it's tubular or flat. So in my case, it's tubular, and this tells me how many days I need to leave it in the refrigerator. 35 days have passed, and about every other day, I massaged the culatello and I flipped it over so that it brined and cured evenly. And now this is what it's going to look like when I remove it from the vacuum seal bag. Notice the meat is going to be more firm. The color is going to be a little pinker, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a rinse as we get it prepared for the casing. And this is where it gets really interesting because typically culatello is going to be put in a hog's bladder, but hog's bladder are very specific and very unique. And personally, I like something a little more versatile. So I'm going to be using collagen sheets for this project. And collagen sheets can be used for duck prosciutto, guanciale, anything that has an off size that you want to cure in your curing chamber. And so all we're going to do is we're going to put that washed culatello directly on top of our collagen sheet. The collagen sheet does not have to be wet when you put this on. And we're just going to go ahead and make sure that we get it on there as good as we can, trying to get it to stick. Now, we don't have to get rid of any of the air pockets. As we put the netting on, that's going to keep that collagen sheet tight. And then I'm going to go ahead and truss it up. This is about a 10-pound culatello, so you want to definitely make sure you've got some good butcher's twine, truss it up pretty strong, and then take a sausage pricker, and this is where we're going to remove any air pockets that might have formed when we put our collagen sheet on. So you just want to make sure that you just prick the surface. You don't really have to penetrate the meat. And as soon as you're done with that, go ahead and weigh it one last time. That's going to be your actual weight. That's your green weight. So we're going to write that down, 45.18. And then I'm generally looking for about a 40% weight loss. So for me, I'm going to write a target weight of 27.10. Once I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and put the sticker on the product and hang it in our drying chamber, where my parameters are 55 degrees Fahrenheit and then roughly 78 to 80% humidity. and that's where it's going to hang until it's done. Now, you're going to definitely want to watch part 2 of this video. So if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe now, because in part 2, I'm going to talk about how to properly apply a sunya layer, when to do it, at what percentage you should do it, and then we're also going to be finishing the drying process and cutting our culatello open. So thanks for watching part 1. If you got any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. We'll see you in the next video.